Hi, everyone, and welcome to El Camino People, the podcast. Today we have one of those fellow hikers from the Camino that we met on Instagram probably like 3 or 4 years ago already. And it's been like finally we were able to chat. So, how are you doing today, Quinton?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
How do you pronounce your name? Because it's one of those I never heard. And
Quinton.
Quinton.
Yes,
Okay,
but
so
most of my friends just call me Q, although I found out in France asking people to call you Q is not a good thing.
So we'll call you Q for easy way. So thank you for being today finally with us. I know you've been all over. You've been hiking this year. You've been one of the few that has been able to travel and work at the same time. So it's great to have you here and have all the input for the ones that don't know you. I invite them to go check your Instagram and they will note it just a view what we're talking about. So how has been your latest hike? You've been all over Turkey.
I was in Turkey for about 8-10 days hiking the Lycian Way, which is beautiful. It's only relatively new, but scenery is amazing. People are incredible. And it does have a Camino feel to it, which is great.
That's one of the things, like, a lot of people, they ask me when we're talking about trails right now, this seems like there's new trails coming out every day. But there's some trails that they're like we were talking before the interview, the PCT, the Appellation, that is mountaineering. It's like when you go to the Alps, it's another feeling. And there's some others that they have the Camino feeling. We should maybe write a book, the Camino feeling trails of the world.
There is something special about the Camino, and I think historical trails versus maybe say a wilderness trail like the PCT or Appellation Trail. And Lycian Way, I think it's about 20 years old in terms of it being marked. But it's a very old route in terms of like goat herders and the local population using it for 1,000 years.
Yeah, I guess all the trails over Europe, Turkey, even Asia, they're all in a way that the new thing is that they've been just, marked. That doesn't happen in the States. Some of those are really man-made in the late, probably 50 or 100 years, even though the BCT probably is one of those trails that historically it has some connection to it, no?
Appellation is the oldest one.
Oh, the Appellation.
And PCT is actually relatively new in terms of, I think it's maybe 30, 40 years old, but Appellation from a historical perspective is probably the oldest in America.
Yeah, North America, probably something in South America will be the hardest to take.
Yeah.
The Inca Trail or one of those.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one.
Also Czech?
Oh, yes, I've done that one. That was my very first one. My dream growing up was always to see Machu Picchu. So.
I think after we finish with the 1 minute questionnaire, we're going to do the 1 minute trails that Q has hiked. So just to make everybody jealous. So
I've been fortunate.
So we always started with a 1 minute questionnaire. They are all Camino related questions, 1 minute. The whole idea is to see how many you can get in 1 minute. Are you ready?
Sure.
Let's do it. Your first Camino.
The Camino Francis.
How many Caminos?
5 or 6.
One Camino to choose.
I think the Francis, it's just special.
1 month to walk.
I would probably go through France.
One city.
Maybe Conques.
A memory?
Coming down towards Ponferrada, I just remember on my first Camino, I was so central in the moment that nothing else mattered except looking at the scenery, and it was just special.
A happy moment.
I think every time I get to Saint Jean Pied de Port, it's a special place for me.
One color.
Blue.
One smell.
Fresh grass after rain.
Canteen or Camelback?
Camelback all the time.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Fisterra or Muxía?
Fisterra.
Coffee, espresso or with milk?
With milk.
Wow, pretty good. So far, so good. So just to get the icebreaker, tell us your top 10 hikes that you have done. I know that they are much more than 10, but to make it short, what are your top 10 that you walk?
It might be hard to do a top 10, but I think obviously the Francis is certainly up there from a pure beauty perspective. I think the Tour de Mont Blanc is a really incredible hike. It's only about 7 days, but incredible scenery and incredible place.
Yeah, the one in spring or in the summer is incredible.
It's beautiful. So, and you come down from the mountain refuges that we were talking about, and just incredible.
Also, the refugees in the Mont Blanc have the same feeling like the Camino. A smaller version, but still, and you find people walking, and they don't say Buen Camino, but kind of like people greet you pretty well.
Yeah. It's those two are really good. There's a track in Australia where I'm originally from in Tasmania called the Overland Track. That's about 7 days. That's very remote and very, very beautiful. But bring a rain jacket. It always rains.
and probably much wilder, no?
I'm sorry?
It's much wilder, I bet. Probably there's no refugios, more backpacking, no?
There are huts spaced out. So they have the huts, but they are much more remote huts. There's not much there except for 4 walls. But that's kind of the point.
There's kangaroos that you see or not really?
Not so much on that trail, but there is a story of the Tasmanian tiger, if you've ever heard about the Tasmanian tiger.
Of course, who haven't seen that, in the Looney Tunes? That's something that we all grown up with, but we don't know what kind of animal really is.
So that's the Tasmanian devil, which is smaller. They're there as well. But Australia has interesting animals, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things for sure that people from this side of the world, we just know that Australia, spiders, snakes, and weird animals. That's all we hear on all the internet. But
we just say that to the tourists to keep them out. That's okay.
And you are doing a really, really good job this year with the COVID and everything being, locked down. And it's one of the countries that I guess is been doing the best. Probably one of the easiest ones also to control, but it's one of the ones that I also have so many friends over there, and there's so many trails to discover that once I think it's over, I think it's also going to be beautiful too, because it's so different than anything else in the world. That
it is very different.
Hiking over there,
they've been fortunate because they're on an island, they can close their borders. But I always think that I've done a bunch of trails, and then I find new trails all the time. There was one I discovered in Australia called the Lara Pinta Trail. It's about 200-300 kilometers, and it just looks amazing. So.
Wow, we'll put it on the list. I think we're going to have to create a list of trails to hike with you.
Yep.
But I don't know if I have enough years to live to finish all of them.
I did put one on my website and ranked the hikes that I've done.
Really? Okay, we will put it on the notes so everyone go and check the Quinton list of hikes of the world. I'm like, it sounds like a really cool name for a book.
It is actually probably a good idea. I tried to rank them in different ways, like length, scenery, accommodation, those type of things.
That will be fun. We can do a list of, the best stop to drink beer, the best stop to hike, the best stop to find love, the best stop to get lost, the best stop to get murdered. I don't know. They can be the top 10 of anything right now.
I think it's a good idea. So everyone needs a bit of a break from normality.
Yeah, and now I think more than ever, we all need to go and hike and hug a tree and get a drink with a stranger and just talk about life.
I agree. I always say the Camino and any long distance hike is cheaper than therapy.
It is totally. And I think right now is when Europe is going to all go over there.
Yep. And it's starting to open, so I'm excited about that one. And
we really see first pilgrims here in Saint Jean the other day. There is even a couple new albergues opening in Saint Jean on the way up to Horizon. There's a new albergue opening on the way up. So people now have one more stage to wait for that uphill climb all the way to Roncesvalles.
I didn't think that hike up the Pyrenees was that bad. It was.
For me, it wasn't bad. It's most the road, and like the asphalt just kills me. If you put that on a normal trail, but I agree that for a lot of people, I'm like you and I were used to hike, but the first day I seen so many people staying behind that it's just funny. But
I think it also depends a lot on the weather.
Yeah.
So the first time that I did the Camino Frances, it was early in the season, I think end of March. So the Pyrenees was still closed. So I went the Valcarles route.
The Valcarles.
Yeah. And that had a lot of snow on it already. So
that's horrible. Walking the Valcarles with the snow on the road. It just ew.
I would highly recommend doing the Pyrenees.
Yeah, but I will recommend anyone that is listening, remember that the pass, when it's closed for a reason. There's people that has been found dead on the trail. Not because it's dangerous, it's because you get lost super easily. And if you don't know the area and if you're not too backpacking and you don't carry a GPS or even with the GPS, mountaineers, they do it. It's open for mountaineering, but it's closed for pilgrims for a reason.
That year that I did it and went the Valcarles route, another couple went over the Pyrenees, even being told that it was closed. And I met them in Roncesvalles, and they were a wreck, and they finished their Camino there. They went home. So.
Yeah. If you're gonna do that one, you need to be, like mountaineering, like you have the correct gear, have your correct, just in case what happened, I can stay a night, because the people that die over there were because they get lost because of the fog, and it's super easy to get lost once you get up.
I could certainly see that for sure.
But wait for the summer. It's beautiful. Just wait for May and you will be able to do it. So let's go to business. when someone from Australia that moved all over the world find out about the Camino de Santiago, what was the first time that you discovered? Were you already a hiker mode person, or was that something that got you into hiking?
I've hiked most of my life for sure, but I was trying to remember this just preparing for us meeting, and I was actually in the Himalayas. I think I was doing maybe Everest Base Camp or the Mansala route or somewhere like that. I remember meeting a gentleman from Europe and him telling me about the Camino de Santiago, and that was maybe early 2000s. And I kind of put it in the back of my mind, like so many other hikes that I hear about, wrote a note and thought about it. And then over the next few years, I think this is a common thread that I hear from anyone that's done the Camino. It starts calling you until eventually you can't ignore it. And I think by about 2010, I was obsessed. I read every single book I could. I planned everything. And then finally in about 2015 was when I was able to go the first time.
Wow. I think it's one of the most different stories. Most of the people is a book, a friend, but never heard anyone that discovered about the Camino at the Everest. I think that's a pretty cool place. And also why someone at the Everest will be talking about the Camino de Santiago. No, you will guess that people at the Everest, they're all mountaineer and, talking about the big stuff. No, but
no, there's a lot of general. I wouldn't consider myself a mountaineer by any stretch.
Yeah.
I'm much more of a hiker. And like on the Camino, you have the mountain huts and they call them tea houses there. But at night, you're sitting around talking and sharing travel stories and other things from different people and places in the world. And I think this gentleman was from Belgium or somewhere. I can't quite remember. But I was always fascinated by historically how someone in Europe could leave their house, just turn west and keep walking. That inspired me.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because when I did my first Camino, one of the songs that we'll be singing all the time will be the Go West. Mm-hmm. And I will be doing stupid videos. And it's just funny how in Europe, as you said, I think the farthest someone has ever walked to Santiago is from Russia.
I remember reading that story. That's fascinating. So.
And that's one of the things that intrigues me the most. I've been researching the longest Camino goes from Russia all the way through, South Africa, but that will be lovely to do one year. But it's just incredible how people have the will and the necessity to walk.
Yeah, sometimes it's just freeing and peaceful. I did the best I could living in kind of West Coast in America a few years ago. When was it? 2018. I flew to Beijing and then went overland via Trans-Siberian Railway through Russia all the way till I got to St. Jean-Pied-de-Port, and then I started walking. So that was my plan of like going west and staying on the land the whole time. So I crossed the Eurasian continent and then kept walking once I got to the traditional Camino routes. Best I could do, but at least I felt like I was leaving my house and heading west and just following the sun.
What a journey. How long did it take you?
I was gone for about 3 months.
Well, how long will be that walking?
I only walked from St. Jean-Pied-de-Port, so I was on the Camino Francis, so that was 25 days or thereabouts.
The normal average Camino.
I was certainly happy to walk after weeks and weeks on a train going through Russia, that's for sure. So.
That would be incredible, walking all the way from Russia or Asia all the way to Santiago.
It would be amazing. So I would love to do the Silk Road. Maybe not walking.
Wow. They are finally coming out to life again. It's one of the things that they're trying to develop for tourism and also for industry. And I hear a couple of movements in the world that they say that Silk Road is finally getting more into. And I think it makes sense. It will be probably with the Camino de Santiago and the Kumano-Kodo, one of the oldest routes in the world.
Yeah, maybe you could combine them both. That would be an impressive walk.
Oof. I think we need to work for a long time as freelancers to be able to afford it. Just go and work for a month, work for another month, and then maybe this is the new, working from home.
And that's the thing that I learned, that there's always someone you meet that has walked further. Like there's a gentleman on Instagram I follow now. I think his handle is The World Walks, and he is.
Oh, I interviewed him. He's an incredible guy. Oh my gosh,
it's fascinating.
Incredible. 5 years walking across the world, and there's another dude that is walking also. That interview also in one of the previous interviews that was following him, and he got stuck in the Canaries. He took a boat all the way, so he's kind of like on the same journey. Just walking.
I don't think I could do that, but it does sound good.
For me, I think I can probably do it for a year, but I don't think I can take 5 years of my life to walk.
That is a very long time.
It is a lot, and giving and also it's not the walking, it's the leaving everything behind. Because when you go for the Camino, it's great because you leave everything behind. Mm-hmm. But you know that it's waiting for you when you come back.
Yes. Another thing that I learned, you can't run away from yourself no matter how far you walk. So.
And doesn't matter how far you go, how long you've been out, you go back to your hometown and everything's the same, 1 year, 2 years, but 5 years.
You're different. Even after doing the Francis, I always recommend people do as much as they possibly can. Because you do come back changed.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. There is a research in Zaragoza, in the university, that to get into the research, you have to walk more than 50 days.
Okay.
15 days. And they interview at the beginning and at the end to see what and how pilgrims change when they walk the Camino.
Yeah. You see people are happier and lighter by the end of it, without a doubt.
For sure. But also that they cry when it's time to go home.
Yes. They realize they have to go back to their normal life.
So how was your first Camino? For you, a hiker already, I'm like coming from the Everest and so many other hikes. Suddenly you go and you start in St. John. How was the feeling?
To be honest, I thought it would be easy and I would just go straight through it. But the first 10 days, I really, really struggled with blisters and sore shins, and I really, really struggled. It was interesting. One of my motivations for doing the first Camino is I really wanted to get back to, sounds very cheesy, but I wanted to be able to feel things again. I'd just been doing things in life and not really thinking about it. And the Camino has a way of giving you things, even if it's a different type of feeling than you expect. I felt all the pains and things that forced me to slow down, which I think I needed, but I certainly didn't expect to do it through like endless blisters for the first 10 days.
It is incredible because the Camino has that thing that it will give you whatever you need. It doesn't matter what you're waiting for.
Yes.
And in case you say you hiking, the Himalayas, there's nothing harder than that. And I think, football players, people that are super in shape, being the most painful, suffering the first day, and people that is 70, 80 years old walking with no problem. So there's something magic in the Camino and giving each one of us what we need in that moment.
Yeah, even if you don't expect it's what you need, it comes. And I was fortunate to meet a woman who helped me a lot. I think I would have given up early on if I hadn't met this woman to help me finish off some of the days, because I was really, really struggling. And again, it's those connections that you make on the Camino that I think make it much more special than a lot of other hikes.
Yeah, I think it totally is about the people. No? That's what this whole thing started. Okay. So how was the first day you get to all those blisters? But coming from all those hikes, what was the difference? I'm like, in your brain, what were you were comparing? I'm like, how does it feel like being in a tea house in the Everest, or being, in the Appalachian, or being anywhere else?
The actual hiking itself wasn't too hard, although, as I said, day one, I was on the road almost the whole way because the Pyrenees was closed. I don't think that helped very much with blisters and getting going, but I loved the albergues at night. It was just that communal feeling of the people and the conversations and the stories. And coming from Australia, I'm just fascinated by people that can so effortlessly change languages and speak in French and German and Spanish. And it's I'm okay with Spanish, not very good with German, but I'm just fascinated by it. I love it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that still surprised me also. Spanish, we are not the best ones at speaking languages. Now we are getting better. But it still, when you see, a German or French that speak 5 languages, or someone that's coming from Russia that speaks 7 languages and is so freely changing from one to the other.
Yeah, fascinating. I think the Swiss is what always fascinates me. Like the German Swiss that are on the border, so fluently switch between languages. It's a real
it sucks. I'm like, we have to study so hard right now. I've been lately studied Chinese for 3 years, and I think I can do numbers, saying hi, and a couple more things. It's horrible.
I learned Chinese for a little bit until I gave my birthday, which apparently is a very unlucky birthday, and the woman didn't want to teach me much anymore. So.
Really?
My birthday is April 4, 1974, and so 4 in the Chinese language, very, very close to the word for death. So it's the equivalent.
I know there was something good on you. I'm March 28th, so we are both area. So,
but 4 is kind of the equivalent of unlucky 13 in kind of European area.
So funny. That's one of the things that I love about the Chinese. The whole, it's not just the language. You have to learn the culture at the same time, and that intrigues me the most.
But I think that's the same with most languages for sure.
Yeah, but the Chinese, I think there are a lot of more little things that I don't know. For me, it seems like even the drawing of the letters and everything has a meaning.
True. And the intonations are very difficult.
Well, there's no way. They said that only Germans can speak perfect Chinese from, other than Chinese itself. But
I did learn one time when I was learning German, you can say ich schlafen die Matrosi versus ich schlafen die Matrosi. One is I sleep on a mattress. The other is I sleep on a sailor.
The beauty of languages, even Spanish from here and Spanish from Mexico is different.
Yes.
It's just beautiful. And all of that gets together in the Camino. And that's one, I think, one of the magic things that happen. So how was those days? And I said, you keep going in the Camino. What are the top memories that you have, in the Camino Frances?
It was, that first Camino was definitely, I've read so many times where it's broken into the 3 phases, where the first is you're really just kind of breaking yourself in, and then you get to the Meseta. And I've heard so many people skip the Meseta, and I have to admit, I loved the simplicity of it. There's nothing to distract you from the views and from walking. Although I got to Hontanes and I was having a really hard day and stayed there for a day, got a hotel there, and just kind of re-energized and met some of the personalities that you read about on the Camino. And that there are towns like that have the spirit of the Camino that makes you just continue on. And post the Meseta, I really found my stride in terms of walking. And I was looking back at some of the photos that I took, especially past Cruz de Ferro around Ponferrada. I was just totally at peace. I have all these photos of ladybugs and flowers and plants and things that I would usually not stop and pay attention to. But I think my mind had let go of everything else. And I was just walking easily and just in peace, just enjoying the moment.
I think it's one of those times that you work before you get, as you said, in peace. But if you have work to do, that's when everything comes out. And I think that's why a lot of people skip the Meseta, because they are afraid, not the loneliness and the walking, because at the end, for me, I always been doing it in the summer. It's like just walking on a Windows XP, desktop. It's just walking. There's nothing else.
Yeah. And the Meseta I thought the Meseta was really beautiful. It was, again, sometimes the lack of distractions is kind of amazing. I live pretty close to the beach here in California, and it's not that I actually really like the beach or the sand or anything, but the lack of buildings and the space is a very calming thing.
Yeah, something special in nothing, and just being there for kilometers and kilometers and just nothing.
Yeah, I agree.
And how was when you were already arriving? A lot of people, they say Cebrero is one of the other points, when you start climbing up. How was the feeling of getting ready to close to Santiago?
I was really strong at that stage. I ended up just at the bottom of the climb up to Cebrero that everyone had warned me is really difficult. I ran into the woman that helped me back early on in the day, and we still keep in touch now, and is a very good friend. And I just powered straight through there. Then I was in a zone. I was just a walking machine at that stage, and I'd been looking forward to Galicia for so long. It reminds me very much of Australia, where I'm from, in Melbourne, the bottom part of Australia, like very lush green forests and things, and just the walking through there, I think, was the best part for me in terms of scenery.
Yeah, there's something beautiful in arriving finally after the desert, to see all the trees, the eucalyptus, the green of Galicia, also the rain, because probably the time you walk, it was probably pretty rainy and cold. I'm like, we still, this year, the last time that it was snow in Cebrero was a couple of weeks ago.
My first Camino, I was fortunate. I had very few days of rain, a few around like Carrion, but after that, not too much. But I did love, and I still do it here, whenever I get homesick, there's a few groves of eucalyptus trees nearby. And I was surprised that there were so many in Spain and Portugal of eucalyptus groves. And when I walk through those, especially after a rain or a shower, you get that smell of the eucalyptus.
Incredible, the smell.
And that brings me home every single time. So if I ever feel homesick, I find a eucalyptus grove.
For me, it reminds me of the Camino, because that's the only place really that I, here in Spain, they plant eucalyptus because of the fires, and it was something so easy to grow there, and Galicia's been always hit.
On the Portuguese, there's a lot too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's beautiful. That's probably my favorite smell. So.
And how was the arrival to Santiago? Was that something, I've been talking lately with a lot of people, because of the books and the movies, we have created this Cinderella, this Disney movie of our arrival to Santiago. And lately I've been talking with a lot of people, and for them, it's been one of those, not bad, not happy, but just another point of the Camino. It doesn't seem like everybody, when you think of the Camino, is like, oh, the arrival, this beautiful moment where there was fireworks on my heart. And sometimes it's just another day, beautiful, but just another day. What was in your case?
It was a special day, and I remember, I'm not sure if it's the same person, but the person that plays bagpipes all the time in that small archway when you...
Yeah, they usually switch because they have a system that they lift papers, and there's the lady that sings and the bagpiper.
And I always remember the bagpiper. And from an experience in arriving, it was great. I think I was done walking. My first Camino, I didn't go on to Fisterra or Umushia. My second one, I did. But I was done walking at that stage. From an arrival perspective, the thing that stands out to me is I was alone. By that stage, I'd hit my stride again, and I outpaced everybody that I walked with. I think that first Camino I finished in 23 days.
Wow, so what was your average distance a day?
By the end, I was easily doing 40-kilometer days. One day I did, I think it was like 56 kilometers because I was just enjoying the walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I outpaced all the people that I started with. So it was a little unfortunate that none of them were there, and I waited a few days, but I was 5-6 days ahead of them. So I think that's my memory. It was a great experience arriving, happy to be done. But the people I'd walked with early, I didn't see them again because I'd moved so fast at the end.
I think that's one of the things that I always tell everyone, when you arrive to Santiago, stay at least a couple of days and just go to the Obradoiro and wait for people. And then you can leave to Fisterra, Muxía, but just stay for a couple of days there, because seeing other people and recognizing a face and smiling is just something special.
I stayed for 10 days.
10 days.
I had a flight to Africa after that. I was doing some volunteering work. So I had plenty of time. And every morning I would go out and sit in the square and watch pilgrims arrive. And I totally agree with you. Spend a few days and just watch people arrive. And
just sitting in those arches, for me, I go on those arches with the books, sit down over there and just seeing the smiles, people hugging. It's just...
Yeah, it's great.
It's just remembering every time. So after that was your first Camino. We were talking at the beginning that people change in the Camino. How was the queue that started in Saint Jean to the queue that finished in Santiago?
I had this idea in my mind a long time ago that I'm going to figure out the meaning of life. It sounds as cheesy as it is. And many, many years ago, I thought it was recognition. Everyone wants to be recognized for doing something good, for helping, whatever it happens to be. But during my Camino, I had a moment where I realized, at least for me, it's not recognition, because that's so external. I want you to recognize me for doing something good. And what I found was that for me, it's much more about acceptance, accepting who you are. Maybe I'm not the most social person. Maybe I'm not this, or maybe I'm not that. But be okay with that and accept it, and stop finding all those things. There's enough bad things in the world that try and pull you down. Don't pull yourself down. And after that, and that was just before, I think, Leon, maybe Astorga, around there. After that, I was the rest of my hike was just calm. That's why I could walk 40, 50 kilometers a day, because I just was not thinking about anything.
Everything was lifted.
Yep. Which is why I have photos and photos of ladybugs and flowers and trees.
It is funny because, for people that know you, I'm like, you're a really successful guy in your life. You've been working and hiking and being able and finding so many in the Camino and saying something so profound as that. A lot of people, because I think that really a lot of people go to find the meaning, we may be going finding the meaning of life, but it's the meaning to ourselves. And we'll go to the Camino with that backpack, no? And once you let it go, is that when you can walk freely, and when you start, seeing the beauty of that lady bear. I remember, watching a snail crossing the road for, I don't know, hours. And just when you find that moment, it's like, who cares right now anymore?
Your brain goes quiet. And that's why I love hiking so much. And I purposely in my own life prioritized living versus working. Like I would change the type of jobs I do or work, and why I work freelance now, so I can prioritize the things that are important for me. One of those things is traveling and hiking. And there's enough work out there to do things. And I'm fortunate I work in computers, so it makes it easier. But I always take my laptop. So I'm always working at some point, but I can do it on the Camino, do it in an albergue at night or somewhere like that. But
that's also, you're touching base on another topic that a lot of people would say, And I know that, we judge in the Camino a lot, and that happened to me. And since the first time that somebody slapped me in the face with a story, I don't judge anymore. I'm like, it's your Camino. But some people, if they see you walk hiking the Camino and suddenly you bring your computer and you start chatting us like, oh, this is the average American with a MacBook Pro, because they always carry a MacBook Pro. All the freelancers that hike the wall, we all carry a MacBook Pro. So it's like,
mine's smaller. That's okay. So.
I'm a MacBook Pro owner, but a lot of people will think I'm like, are you really walking the Camino? Are you working? What are you doing? I'm like, but I would like you to go a little deeper in that one, because I truly agree. And like, you have found a way to mix both your love and your job and do what you want when you want.
And it takes practice. What I do find is you can't do a little bit of work all the time. You have to take a few days off every now and again and just work, then put the laptop away and hike again or something similar. So that's generally what I try to do. I'll take a few days off every 7-10 days, really get the work done, get it out of the way. Then I won't open my laptop again. I've been in technology most of my life, and I would happily never have a phone again or anything like that. That's my job. But I put it away and I put dedicated time for it. It's the best that I can do.
Mm-hmm. But having that job also allows you to go anywhere, hike for 10 days, and something that someone else will have to, get probably a gap year to be able to do half of what you have done.
Yeah, but I also prioritized it. So I
think that,
I could do different things, and right now it suits me. Tomorrow it may not as well, but I like the balance. It helps me stay sane. I can get out there and hike and just slow down.
And I agree, right now I don't have the time but able to do it, but I go run. I run marathons and I run because it's the same, that's what gives me the freedom. And I think that a lot of people right now that says like, I don't have 30 days to the Camino, I don't have 15. I'm like, if you don't have 30, maybe think about if you can get it, or maybe think about if you can have 20 or 10. But I think sometimes people, we put those barriers, those walls just to say, no, I can't because of my job, because my family, whatever. I seen anything from 80 something years old walking the Camino to families with 4 kids, babies, to people with no legs. So what is your excuse? No.
And everyone's in a different position. So it's hard to say, of course, just take 10 days off or 20 days off. Not all of us are that fortunate. Many work paycheck to paycheck, but I do think everyone can take 30 minutes and go for a run or a walk in the trees. And I honestly believe that is the best sort of therapy you can get.
For sure. So you finished your Camino. That was the new time, and then you decided to go back. What happened that you decided after so many other hikes on the wall, it's like, oh no, the Camino's calling me again?
There's a few hikes that I've done that it sounds strange, but I don't think I did correctly. Like I felt like I rushed through the first Camino, and I felt like it was very internal. I didn't stop and look at a bunch of the churches and go into areas that I thought I would. So I really wanted to go back and go a little bit slower and do it, for me, much more of an external thing. Take my time, look at all the churches and the side trips and all the small kind of detours. So I went back in 2017, so about 2 years after I did the first one, and did the Francis again.
What time of the year this time?
That time I did it in May. I'm not a big fan of hot weather, so I try and stay away from the really hot.
I did that one in July, so yeah, we missed each other for a couple months.
But ironically, I ended up doing that one faster than the first one. So
really,
but I saw all the things that I wanted to see.
So that's one of the things that a lot of people, and I ask, I'm like, there's so many caminos. There's the Norte we were talking prior to, there's the Portuguese, the Pia de la Plata.
Yes.
And you living abroad and hiking so many of the caminos, you decide to go back to the Frances again. And you go back and then you walk it faster than the first time.
I walked it faster, but I felt like I saw much more and spoke to more people and made deeper connections. Like I met a man from Belgium who'd left from his front door and walked. And I met a bunch of people from France that started in Le Puy-en-Velay and had walked further as well. I met a gentleman that started from Rome, not your friend, but another gentleman from Rome, and then he was on his way back. So I felt like I wasn't in my head so much. I was there just for probably the exercise versus the spiritual, which was the first one.
Yeah, so the first one, the backpack was lifted, and the second one was just to enjoy yourself.
Correct, yes.
And how was the arrival in Santiago the second time?
I blew past it, to be honest. I stayed for a day and then went to Finisterre and Murcia because I'd spent 10 days last time in Santiago and I knew all the streets and the good coffee shops. So I spent a day there just for a rest day and then kept going.
And another big question, Fisterra or Muxía, which one to choose and why?
If you have the time, do both.
Which one first? Because that's also another question.
I went to Muxía and then ended in Fisterra,
just
because the traditional mile marker is there, although there's one in Muxía as well. I think Muxía is probably more of a spiritual place, but I spent 2 days in Fisterra afterwards. It's easier to stay there from accommodation.
Yeah, for me, I always said, I suggest people to go first to Fisterra and to finish in a good way in a party, go with the family and have some drinks, a bonfire on the beach, and then go to Muxía to unplug and get ready to go home. But both are beautiful in their own way, and really the marker is Santiago. So I don't know who was the smart guy that put the zero marker over there, but
I just think it's fascinating that historically it was the end of the world, and
that's what is the beauty. I'm like, yeah.
My country, from a European perspective, is only a few hundred years old. No one had even thought about it at that stage.
I'm like, yeah, well, it'd be funny to know how far were you from your hometown, from Fisterra, like in the old days?
It's a good question. I did end up, I'm not sure if it was on that Camino or another one. I think it was that one. I actually did one of the hikes, the Milford Track in New Zealand. And there's a lighthouse at the very, very bottom, which is effectively the end of the world to the south. And I took a rock from there, and that's the rock that I left at Cruz de Ferro.
Wow.
It was as far as I could imagine getting a rock from somewhere that was at the opposite end of the world, and I brought it.
That's incredible. So I guess if someone goes there and puts a piece of bread, and someone goes to Finisterre and put a piece of bread, we're doing a earth sandwich.
Maybe. Yeah. It's a long way away.
And then you continue your second Camino. Was there a third Camino?
Yes. So after the Francis in 2017, I did the same year I did the Camino Codo, which I'm not sure if you consider that a Camino or not, but they are UNESCO related.
For me, I think it's one of the few ones that can be considered as Camino, as the Camino de Santiago, first of all, because it's the only one else that is in the UNESCO. Also because the Brotherhood of the Camino de Santiago, for the ones that don't know, if you walk the Camino Codo and the Camino de Santiago, you had what is called the dual pilgrim status. You get like a super powerful, and they give you a cave now, they give you a pin.
Yeah, I really liked it. And I did see quite a few Camino signs along the Camino Codo as well. So it felt related.
So how was the Camino Codo compared to the Camino de Santiago?
The quickest way to think about it is it's much shorter, depending on the route you do. And there's numerous routes. The most popular one is about 5 days. You find that just when you're getting into it, you're done. So I always suggest do a few of the other routes when you're there. They're each 2-3 days in addition. But it feels very similar in the sense that you stay at, they're called onsens, but the equivalents of, say, an albergue refugio as well. But the food is incredible. It's like somebody is making you a 5-star sushi dinner, and there's often like the hot springs, which are the onsens. That you can
say that they're a little more expensive. No, they're more like an Airbnb style, because usually it's people's houses, no, that host you for a night.
And you have to buy it all as a package to start with. Is the easiest way. You can't just show up, because it's actually quite difficult to find the places to stay, because if you don't understand the language like I didn't, it's difficult to interpret sometimes.
Yes, one thing that they don't speak English at all, no?
Not many. No, it's a very rural part of Japan.
So as they like to hire a company and get a whole package set up, or?
Yes, it took me a while to find it, but there is one website that you can go to that you can plan it all, and they book it all ahead of you.
Yeah, right now the province over there, I know the guy that run the tourism over there, they have a big setup, and it's getting more known as the Camino also.
It's very mountainous, so it's up and down all day, every day. Not super high elevation, but you're constantly going up and down. But it is very, very beautiful and very remote.
And what is the feeling of the pilgrims over there? Is there anything, like the Camino family, or you walk by yourself and like?
You mostly walk by yourself, because the places that you stay at night is maybe one other person if you're lucky. So I never heard of anything that had 5, 6, 10, 20 people like you might on the Camino. So it's much more solitary is the way I would describe it.
And it's really, a lot of people that walk the Camino, they say it's more spiritual than the Camino, or at least that people that goes there goes more for the spiritual part of it.
It's definitely more spiritual, but I don't think any less than, say, the Francis. I think where the Francis feels less spiritual is there's just so many people.
Yeah.
But if you do some of the other routes on the the Camino in Spain, you can get that sense and feeling as well. I did the Portuguese from Lisbon, and especially the first part to Porto, it felt very spiritual. You're going to these old towns like Coimbra and Tomar that have so much history and religious history. And I'm not a religious person, but it does have so much history involved in it as well.
That's one thing that I agree with you. Even if you're not a religious person, going to Europe or going to Asia and not visiting the religious temples is like missing 0.5% of the story, and also probably cheaper than any museum ever. So,
yeah, correct. I've been reading a book by a gentleman called Timothy Egan about the Via Francigena.
Francigena?
Yeah, which is another one that I want to do, and it's
you haven't done it yet?
I have not done that one yet, but I do want to do it. So.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's one of the ones that it says that it's funny because I was talking yesterday with an Italian pilgrim that says, how Italians come to Spain to walk the Camino, but Italians don't walk the Via Francigena. They haven't developed the love for the effort, and it's really in a way the same of the Camino de Santiago.
Yeah, it's supposed to be beautiful, and I want to start from Canterbury, so go all the way.
Oh, so you're going to do it all down from Canterbury all the way to Rome?
That's my plan. Next year, hopefully.
Wow. Okay. Maybe we'll see. Maybe we can. That would be a lovely one. So for the ones that haven't checked your Instagram or your Facebook yet, you love photography.
I do.
You have one of the most amazing pictures I ever seen, and you have a style totally to yours. So what will be the tricks, if you can give us like a 5 minutes masterclass, 2 minutes masterclass, what to go to the Camino, after having hiked so many Caminos right now, everybody's going with a DSLR, everybody's going with a GoPro. There's so many things out there that at the end, sometimes I think they take time of your Camino, as you were saying. Sometimes, the Camino is for what it is. And right now also, if we have a good phone, I'm like going with the iPhone, and it's just incredible. So
they are amazing. The only thing that I find with the iPhones and any smartphone cameras, they are really good, but they struggle with contrast. So if it's bright sky and then dark somewhere else. So I carry a mirrorless camera. It's not a super big one, but I got into photography because I wanted to slow down and enjoy the moment. So for me, I guess my biggest, you can learn all the skills and techniques, and anyone wants to reach out to me on Instagram, I can help them with something on that side. But for me, take a moment and compose the photo. So many times we just pick up our phone because it's so convenient, take a quick shot, and it might be fine, but it's not structured, it's not centered, and you're not actually capturing a moment that you want. Like you're creating something there, whereas so many times these days, because it's so convenient, we just take a snap and keep walking. I like to stop and think about the moment.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, taking the Camino, maybe you will think that you're missing the moment if you take, like 3 minutes to set up the picture. And I took a couple of classes on the rule of the thirds and how to set the scene and what do you want to focus. And it is so important because sometimes we try to rush it. And when you rush it at the end, you ended up having 1,000 pictures of nothingness. They're crappy. And then you have to go through like a bunch of filters so it'll look more Instagrammy and you feel so well of yourself. And
it's an interesting thing that with digital, you can take as many photos as you like. So it's not a big a deal. You'll eventually get one good one. And I, especially on something like a longer hike, I don't bring a tripod or anything. So I'm not spending 5 minutes or so to capture a picture or a scene, but I will stop and wait for, say, people to get out of the way or wait for a cloud to move somewhere. And it really helps me just enjoy that moment. And I end up taking photos for myself, not because I want to make them Instagram worthy or something else. You see a bunch of photos that I have that are of coffee, and sometimes just that moment in the morning when you go to a cafe and they make a great like latte art or something. It's just that moment that I want to capture for myself.
I think that's the beauty, right? I remember, I start with my old Nikon and I used to develop the film and everything. And for every picture you take, it took you like 5-10 minutes just to set up because that it's going to be so expensive to develop it. Correct. And right now we went to the other side. We took so many pictures, but they are all still in our hard drives. And I printed, right now I print a book of almost every Camino, and I still have a couple to develop, but I try to put everything in folders. And as you say, sometimes it's not the beauty of whatever is those memories that they bring you, and sometimes just a latte can be the best memory of the day. Or
it's whatever. And I journal a lot as well when I hike. And so it's just capturing that moment. And if I can take a photo that goes along with some of those words, those things are what bring back a lot of memories for me.
So what will be the top 3 tricks if you want to say someone, to carry, well, like in the Camino, what will be the 3 tricks for someone to take a picture?
I would suggest bring a better camera than a phone, just because you do have to take it out of your pocket and you have to think about it, and contrast sometimes it is really difficult. Choose the topics that you want. Is it people, or is it architecture, or is it scenery? Like the second time I went on the Francis, I intentionally wanted to take photos of people inside the churches and the architecture. So I spent a lot of time looking for those, and I found I came away with a lot of great photos that had a theme. My first one, not so much of a theme. I was just taking photos of cows and people and everything.
I think that's the average Camino. The first one is just everything but the sink.
Correct. And then I think probably the third bit of advice, edit your photos, but don't over edit them. I think so many people over edit them, add too much clarity or too many weird colors and filters. Like, make them pop, but don't change them.
I think right now we are going on to the overdeveloped pictures and filters, and everyone, we've seen all these Instagram profiles that they all have the same filter. If you have something guild related, they're all the pastel tones and everything. And if not, you have the 4K and the new super high. I'm like,
it's funny. I have the camera that we're talking to now is a 48 megapixel high-end DSLR, and I actually shoot with a 16 to 24 megapixel. It's a Leica, but I like a little bit of the graininess in it. It feels a bit more real, whereas sometimes with the super high megapixel ones, it's so sharp that there's too many details for me to focus on.
Really too sharp. That's one of the things. But for me, one of the things I find out that just with the Lightroom and basic filters, it really helps some of the pictures. I used to go, right now I go usually with the GoPro, a DJI with the gimbal, phone. I used to carry a DSL also, but sometimes you are so quick that really just playing a little bit with some of those filters really help. And as you say, some have you be, because sometimes you over filter and it looks like.
Yeah. I think enhancing, at least in my way of working, enhancing a photo, like bringing out the natural colors, for instance, that are there, or maybe bringing out the shadows a little bit as well. That's what photographers have done since they used to put the negatives in emulsion and move them around and let them sit in there a little bit longer. But where I struggle a little bit is the big filters that change the photo versus enhance the photo. And I really try to avoid that. I'll admit that I've learned a lot along the way. Some of my photos from the Himalayas look like I was on an acid trip because I edited them so much. And you eventually learn over time that just a little bit is much more powerful than a lot.
I know, because right now, as you see, there's a lot of pilgrims that they do crazy things. And we talk about Claudio. Claudio used to have a time where all these pictures, he will, remove the background and put the stars and everything. And that was his style at the time. But if you see his pictures now, you see such a growth and so different. And I think we all go through that. We grow with pictures, we grow with Camino, we grow with the styles. And if you see my first Instagram, you cannot see it because Instagram decided to close it. But if you see even the first pictures from my first Camino to the ones now, it's nice how you develop and you focus on new things. Right now, I just focus on people mostly.
But that's the way you learn, and that's anything. I play a lot of guitar, and I'll constantly learning to get better and better at guitar. Same with photography. I don't give up. I look back at my old photos, and some of them are terrible. But what I do find is that because I keep everything in Lightroom, some photos that I thought I couldn't save from years and years ago, I now have the skills in editing to save them and make them look pretty good. So don't throw anything away. Go back to them again and again later on.
That's one thing. So I also agree with you. And right now, with all the possibilities of storage, I'm like, I don't know how many gigabytes you have of pictures. Do you even know the number?
Gig, I don't know, but from
terabytes
a perspective, I think I have about 50,000 photos.
That's not too much coming from you. I'm like, right now, I think I have close to like 600-700 gigabytes of pictures. Yep. I know that because I have like 5 different terabyte accounts online just to save. And I just bought a self-storage here at home, and NAS, to keep all my pictures. But as you say, never delete a photo. You never know.
No, I don't delete them.
There's no point of that. So tell us, what is the next Camino that you are thinking about now? What this looks finally, that today is May 21st that we are recording this, and finally we know that Americans and everyone being vaccinated is going to be allowed to travel into Europe. We know also that the UK is not letting, they don't want the people from the UK to travel to Spain, but Spain allows people from the UK to travel to Spain. And right now, the only thing they have to be is a 10-day quarantine and to the COVID tests. So it seems like things are back to normal. Over there in the States, it seems like in a couple of days, you're even going to be able not to wear a mask or going back to almost full normality, no?
In California, it's a little bit later. I think it's June 15th that people can take off masks from fully vaccinated individuals. But I am super excited that Europe is opening up. Not only that it means the situation is getting better for everybody, but I know tourism in particular has been hit really hard. So I'm going with my daughter over to Greece mid-June. And then after there, I'm going to start hiking from Le Puy-en-Velay on the Via Podenices with the plan to go to St. John, Peter Port. It's been a few years since I've got back, so I want to go for a nice walk.
And it's funny that in this case, you are not, one of the things that a lot of people, they don't get is like sometimes the Camino de Santiago doesn't have to end in Santiago. And I think that we have created this beauty that everything, and it seems like right now, all the new Caminos, they're just small little Caminos that finish in Santiago. And I will encourage everyone just to, maybe do the Aragonés only to Pamplona, or maybe do the Del Norte to Bilbao, or maybe do the Bastant in Pamplona, maybe do the Catalonian or someone, from France. And finish in St. John.
I think the first 2 weeks of the Via Podenices from, say, Le Puy to Montserrat or Conques is probably the most beautiful Camino I've been on.
That's what people said, that is so different. Also, the style, the houses that the few people walk in and the camaraderie.
And it's like walking through a fairy tale. Like there are old medieval towns that have not changed or were affected by the wars, and it is just stunning.
We would love to.
It's hilly. So be prepared.
That's what people say. Oh, well, always prepare if you're a pilgrim. So thank you so much, Q, for being here today with us in your Caminos. I can wait till, I will invite everyone to go and follow you on Instagram and follow your website, because they will for sure going to be, happy. And I guess it's always great to have this community of Camino lovers, hikers that is always putting things on that list of Caminos to do on the future.
Yeah, there are a lot. And the problem is, no matter how many you've done, you'll always meet somebody that's done another one that sparks your interest in.
And that's the problem, that you go there and there's always those freak Caminos that walk with you, that suddenly you're having a beer and they tell you this new Camino. Like the last one I heard of, this one that goes through Petra, that is kind of like new also, that says beautiful. And I'm like,
yeah, I know that one. I haven't done it, but I know it. So, yeah.
Walking in Petra, not bad. And then you hear these guys that they are taking 5 years of their life to walk over the wall, and you're like,
that's a commitment. That is a commitment.
That's a huge commitment. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing, the love of the Camino with all you do. And hopefully we'll meet soon. And as we always say, buen camino, ultrella.
Yeah, ultrella. Maybe I'll see you in Pamplona on the way through.
Hope so.